Hi guys, welcome to episode 4 of me finally getting to 900 ELO on chess.com. I'm sorry this took a long time to upload. It took a really long time to get to 900 ELO, and I'll be only showing you one of the games where I actually got to 900 ELO on chess.com, because most of my games are pretty boring. This is a game where I finally got to 900 ELO on chess.com. And the journey between 800 and 900 ELO took really long. So let me show you this game. Firstly, I was playing black, and firstly my opponent played e4, I played c5, and my opponent played f3, free standard Sicilian. I play lots of times, if you see my previous videos. Yes, my opponent moves his knight to b5 to pin my knight to my king. I see this lots of times. I just push the g-pawn, as you normally do. And then my opponent pushed his d-pawn to d4. And I decided to... actually, instead of deciding to take, as I normally would, I decided to attack my opponent's bishop because that was more valuable to my opponent. So I pushed the a-pawn to try and kick the bishop out. My opponent decided to trade bishop for knight. If I were the opponent, I wouldn't want to do this because I think a bishop is worth more than a knight. And also, my opponent takes, I take, and because of this c-pawn, my center is under more control. So anyway, I take back. My opponent decides to take my c5 pawn, and instead of taking back, I just move my bishop to g7, because if I took, it would have allowed my opponent to maybe trade queens with me, which meant I wouldn't have been able to castle. So I just let my opponent take my pawn. My opponent castles, and I push my d5 pawn because I don't want it to be taken again by the c5 pawn. My opponent takes, I take, and my opponent pushes his queen to d3. Maybe he was trying to double his rook and queen. I just develop my knight, and my opponent develops his c3 pawn, which also targets this pawn. I just develop my bishop to f5 to try and kick the queen out. The queen moves forward, and I castle. And then the queen moves to b4. And I'm not sure what my opponent is trying to achieve here. But after that, I move my rook to b8. My opponent moves back, and I push my pawn to d4 to attack my knight, and also made sure my pawn wasn't being attacked. My opponent moves his knight away, and I move my queen to d5 to gain control. I'm not sure what I was trying to do exactly. I'm not sure what my plan was. My opponent took my pawn. I blundered my pawn because I didn't realise that there were now two knights on this pawn. But anyway, I move my queen, my opponent took my pawn. And then I just put my bishop on g4, targeting the f3 knight. I was thinking that if I took this knight, my opponent would have to take back, and I could take this knight. But then I realised afterwards that that's just flawed, because my opponent could take back with the other knight. So yeah. So after that, my opponent moved his bishop to g5. But this was actually good, because this meant I could take my opponent's knight. My plan would actually work, and I could take my opponent's bishop, because this knight is defending this bishop and my queen's attacking this bishop also. But instead of that, I pushed my pawn to e5. My opponent decided to trade bishop for knight. And my opponent moved his knight back to e2. I moved my bishop to e7, trying to target this pawn and maybe win the pawn back, which I lost in the beginning. My opponent moved his pawn to b4. I pushed my pawn to e4, which triple attacked this knight. My opponent decided to attack my queen by moving his knight to c3. I moved my queen to c4. My opponent moved his knight to d2. I moved my queen to d4, attacking his knight. And I didn't realize that this pawn was again being attacked by two knights. So I blundered another pawn. After that, I took the b4 pawn because I realized it was undefended. The c pawn moved, pushed forward to c6. I moved my bishop to I moved my knight to e8. I'm not sure what I was trying to do. My opponent pushes h pawn to h3 to try and push my bishop out. And I moved my bishop to f5, targeting this central knight. After that, my opponent decided to attack my queen as rook. I moved the queen back. My opponent decided to attack my queen again by moving his rook to d5. But I just took the knight, which I was able to do because it was a discovered attack. So when I took the knight, my bishop attacked my opponent's queen, which meant he couldn't take back with this knight. My opponent took my queen. I took the queen. My opponent took my rook and took with the bishop. So yeah, because of all these trades, I ended up a minor piece up, but also they're two bishops versus one knight, which is way better. My opponent decided to trade knight for bishop, and my opponent moved his pawn rook to d1. I'm just trying to take some pawns, especially this c6 pawn. And my opponent didn't realize that he blundered his rook by moving it to d6. So I just took the rook, and my opponent resigned because of that. So that was a pretty good game. A lot of the games, I just win by my opponent resigning. So hopefully as I get to a higher level, I'll win by actually checkmating my opponent. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and please like and subscribe so you can see following episodes of this series, especially where I finally get to 1000 elo on chess.com.